Some of our grandparents are old enough to remember a world where if you got a scratch and it was infected, you could literally die. It was the world before antibiotics, before the 1930s. Sadly, our grandchildren might know that world again. My name is Graeme Codrington. This is Throwforward Thursday, and I want to talk to you about the end of antibiotics. Those people who work in the industry, who focus on developing and finding new antibiotics, are really sounding an alarm at the moment, saying that by 2050 it is very likely, not just possible, very likely, that our antibiotics will no longer work. Bacteria are continually evolving, responding to their environment, and they are responding to our antibiotics. Bacteria are finding ways of becoming immune to the antibiotic poison that we feed them. And there's a very real possibility that by 2050, our antibiotics will no longer work. And that means that infections will cause death. Back to the way things used to be a century ago. This is dramatic and serious, and we need to make sure that we take it seriously as soon as possible. How do we do that? Well, we need to stop using antibiotics unless they are absolutely necessary. Of course, they are often necessary, and we should take them when we need them. But too often, doctors just hand them out like they're sweets, and often hand them out for secondary issues. Yeah, when you get a flu is not a bacteria, but you normally take an antibiotic just to bomb your system and make sure that nothing else goes wrong. We really need to stop doing that. We also need to stop putting as many antibiotics into our food system as we do. A lot of meat, a lot of cows and sheep just get given antibiotics to keep them healthy. We understand why the farmers do that, but it is creating a massive secondary problem in bacteria developing a resistance to antibiotics. And maybe we need to look a lot more at alternatives to antibiotics, and phages and things like that are in the works. I won't go into detail now. The end of antibiotics is an absolute nightmare scenario for the future, which will cause millions of excess deaths every single year and take us back to a world we only know a little bit about from history, where getting a scratch and getting that infected was a very life-threatening, serious situation. We don't want that in our future. We know what it looks like in our past. So today, we need to think differently about how many antibiotics we take and minimize that as much as possible. The end of antibiotics is a very scary future, and it is a very real possibility. As always, Throwforward Thursday, we jump into the future, we see what's going on there. Sometimes it's exciting, sometimes it's scary, but it almost always has real world today implications. Join me next week when we continue in our End of series and look into the future once again. I'll see you next week.